Okay, here's part three. Texamosis asked if I was in a room with Francis Galton, Charles Davenport, and David Duke, and I had a gun with only one bullet. What would I do? I'm assuming the question implies that I would have to shoot one of them. I'm interpreting it that way. And I guess if I had to, I wouldn't really want to shoot anybody, but the answer would be David Duke. And my reasoning is that Francis Galton and Charles Davenport were both brilliant scientists and um, misinformed, but I don't think evil people at heart necessarily. David Duke, on the other hand, is a douchebag and a con artist, and he has the available modern. He has the information at hand to reach a different conclusion than he chooses to do. So that's my answer to that. Comtech224 asks, "Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?" Um, I I think it used to be on Nickelodeon. I may be incorrect on that. Comtech's second question: Cubs or Sox? You know what? I don't follow football. I simply don't know the answer. And his third question: How have I been? I've been great, thank you very much. Nish Brown asks, if I were a superhero, would I rather fly or breathe underwater? I would rather fly. Okay, G. Nettie asked if their fur gets white in the winter, talking about the Arctic ground squirrels. No, they do not. They hibernate. Karuja Sepelgus asked me to summarize my political and economic views. I don't have too many views on economics. It's not really an area of interest of mine, really. But politically, I tend to lean pretty far left overall. Ledman, 1989, asked a whole bunch of questions. The first one: Have I ever experimented with my sexuality? The answer is yes, and that's as much as I'm going to say right now. I might make a video in more detail on that. There's been a few threads going that would seem appropriate to fill in on that. The second question: Have I ever killed somebody intentionally or unintentionally? No. To the best of my knowledge, I've never caused a human death. Third question: My worst body injury. I fell from the top of a climbing rope, from the top of a gymnasium down to the ground, pausing only to fall through a set of monkey bars. I busted my right arm. Some of you may have seen my videos. When you see my arm, it's pretty messed up. It doesn't work right. I broke it. There were 14 pieces in the elbow. My radius and ulna were snapped in two places each across the wrist, and then my hand was busted as well. The hand bones were broken. I don't know if all of them or some of them, whatever the case may be. But I was in the hospital for a long time and had multiple reconstructive surgeries to try to put me back together. This is when I was 12. And they did a fairly good job, but like I said, I've got limited motion on it. I've a lot of a lot of I still feel like my skin is pretty numbed on the outside. And it took me like doing this literally took me several years to be able to do that after this injury. It was pretty bad. Fourth question: What drugs have I used? Well, I'm not proud to say in my youth, probably all of them, at least all of them that existed prior to the mid 90s. I've heard kids talking about new things that I've never tried, and I have no interest in trying. I don't do anything. My only drug now is beer and nicotine. Question number 5: Beatles or Rolling Stones? I honestly like them both equally, depending on what I'm in the mood for. Dogs or cats? Again, I like them both. I have dogs and cats, and they're very different, obviously different personalities, and I like them both. Cake or pie? I don't like either cake or pie, really. I'm not a dessert person by any means. I don't like sweets, so I no cake, no pie. Any unique talents? His last question. I'd have to say the one thing that's unique is that I seem to automatically know to the lowest possible taxonomic category what everything is that I encounter, any biological specimen. Meaning, if I see something I've never seen before, um, I can immediately rank it in order. Sometimes the species, if it's something I'm vaguely familiar with or I'd read about. Um, but once I actually encounter and hold a species and identify something in my hand, I forever know its taxonomic hierarchy. It just comes. The Linnaean classification has just always been natural to me. So it makes me really good at my job, but not good at much else. I pretty much suck at everything else. So Bamboo 4 Tamishigiri, I probably screwed that name up too, asks if my field of study is what I originally set out to do. I believe that's correct. And I started off my whole life since I was a child. I was 6 years old when I got a copy of Tucker Abbott's Seashells of North America, and it had all the scientific names, and so I immediately set about identifying these things. And I always knew I wanted to be a marine biologist, and I've always been interested in taxonomy because I was sort of naturally inclined to be good at it. Color Me Gone asked about the behavior of the ground squirrels in relation to the buildings. I think they were just using them as places to stand to look up. They're always on the lookout for birds. There's a lot of eagles and things, so I think that they're just using the structures to stand on. I don't know if they have any particular other interactions with them. That area was an old, there's like a bunch of old concrete things like where guns used to be during World War II. And so they sort of were hanging out there at that time. And then there was like a trailer and a power box and things like that they lived underneath the trailer. Russell Channel wanted to know what in my work counters the concept of directionality in evolution. In reality, that's a great question because kind of my specialty in the world is the evolution of decapod crustaceans and their characteristics. And decapods are a group that you can see like repeated convergences on useful forms for a particular habitat, despite the ancestral form having a wide variety of other characteristics. Meaning, like you've seen, like the lobster body type has evolved multiple times, the shrimp body type has evolved multiple times, the crab body type has evolved multiple times, and we see this repeated because that body type sort of fits the particular niche, and it kind of shows that you can almost make, isn't the right word, but you can almost make any decapod type out of any other decapod type through a series, and it's evolutionarily happened. So Evilanius asked, what is the flight speed of an unladen swallow? I have an answer for that. Park et al. Calculated the flight speed of a European swallow to be 11 meters per second. I will put a link down below to the paper in the Journal of Experimental Biology. Big EO 66 asked if there was one question in evolutionary biology that I could have answered definitively, what would it be? One question in evolutionary biology that I think would be fascinating to know would be this question of whether or not terrestrial plants are the result of a symbiosis between algae and essentially fungus. There's been some speculation that plants were able to exploit land by basically going the lichen route first and then becoming kind of like eukaryotic cells, becoming so fused that they became a single organism. And there's no real solid answers as to if that's the case. There are certainly evidences for it. There's also some evidences against it. I would love to be able to see that moment in evolution and whether or not it occurred. Happy Jesus 123 wanted to know if pursuing a PhD was a good idea, worth my time and money. In reality, yeah, it is. I haven't finished my dissertation, and it's a gigantic pain in the ass. But the reality is, the opportunity it opens up or will open up for me is immeasurable. Just the learning experience alone, going through the process, it's changed how I look at my own field in many ways, many important ways, much more than a master's did, although a master's was also important. So I'd say if you're interested in a career in the sciences, PhD is really the only way to go, in my opinion. Answers in Nature asked if the mountain behind me was good for backpacking. Yes, it is. It's actually a really, really famous, popular hiking location. There's a number of trails up it. It's called Mount Ballyhoo. You can look it up online. It's pretty well known. I think it's the highest point on Alaska Island. Apostatism asks if I've ever had any issues over my son's name. Now, those of you may not know, my son, my little boy's name is Darwin. And the reality is, it was funny because when he wrote that down, I actually wrote my answers down on the sheet of paper. I wrote all the questions down, and then I wrote my answers, or at least summaries of my answers, down on the paper. And I had written no. The reality is, almost everybody's thought it was really cool, that it, and appropriate in my career, that I would name my son Darwin. The only time I've ever encountered it was actually this incredibly phenomenally stupid people, this couple that we met when we first moved to Juneau, that we got sort of stuck hanging out with for a very brief period of time. And her big contribution was that she thought it was really cool that we named our child after the dolphin on Sequest. And I said, no, we actually named him after the scientist Charles Darwin. And she said, who's that? I thought, yeah. But then what the funny thing is that in between that question being asked and me writing it down and me recording this now, I actually had a little bit of an incident where I got into a discussion with somebody I was working with, one of the fishermen, and they were talking about, you don't believe in that Darwin crap, do you? And I was like, well, yeah, I actually teach it. I think Darwin was a great scientist, and whatever. And he's like, Darwin's one of the most evil men in history. Do you know that he's responsible for the Nazis? And he started going off on that crap. And I said, well, that's really not true at all. And that's commonly said, but not a supportable claim. And he said, well, still, it's an evil name. It's a name that that's written down in the book of life as going to hell. And it's like, well, I named my son Darwin. And he's like, why would you do that to that poor child? So it was kind of a negative response. I was kind of a little ticked about the whole exchange. Apostaticism then asked, with continuing my education, what do I plan on doing? I would love to teach again. That's really my dream, would be to teach, to have undergraduates to mold and sculpt. I really love teaching. Is probably my favorite thing to do of all time. I mean, I feel like, it's kind of reminiscent of a video CJ made a while ago. I really feel alive when I'm in front of a class, and the stuff in between is leaves me kind of wanting, when I'm not. I mean, I would always go through, like he had mentioned, I'd go through a depression like at the end of the school semester, when it was coming to a close, finals week and such. I would start getting really, really depressed. It's kind of weird, but I love it. It's when I'm really truly alive for those 3 hours a day when I'm standing in front of a class full of students. Stanpack 007 asked if the squirrels use their tails for communication. I think so. Giving how, I watch and when you watch them out, I mean, the way they flick their tails seems to be pretty distinctive. I'm suspecting that they're signaling each other, that danger's approaching or something like that. So there is some communicative. I would guess. I really don't know the answer though. Abaddon5 asked if I could choose any religion, what would it be? I don't know if it has to be a real religion or if it can be an imaginary religion. He did state that I can't pick atheism or agnosticism. So if it can be anything, then I would choose the teachings of Sirach of Vulcan. That would be my religion of choice. If it has to be a real religion, um, I think Unitarianism, because at least in the Unitarian church that I used to go to, my wife and I would go to, there were outright open atheists there that were accepted, as their lack of belief was still accepted as an equal path to whatever. And so I kind of liked that. So I think that would be my choice. The Earthworm Zodiac asked a bunch of questions. Some of them are repeats of questions I've already answered, so I'm going to skip those. I hope you don't mind. I just don't want to be too awfully repetitive in this. This video is long enough as it is. So, first question, what is my favorite sea creature? I'd have to say Bathynomus giganteus. You can Google it. I'll maybe put a link down below. If you, it's a giant isopod. It's the world's largest isopod species, and I had the opportunity to handle them and hold them and collect numerous specimens. It's an amazing animal. They're just. I've loved them since I was a kid. I had a copy of Waldo Schmidt's Crustaceans, and when I was like maybe 12 or 13, and I as soon as I saw that species, I wanted to hold one. wanted to have one. He asked, what was a specific catalyst for my field? Again, as I mentioned earlier, getting the book on the Tucker Abbott book on mollusks really, I think, was sort of an eye opener for me. I mean, learning that I can associate an organism with a scientific name and a taxonomic hierarchy really, really made it clear to me that I was going to pursue this field. So. Next question was, what is the most compelling evidence against creationism? That's a great question. That's one I could make a whole bunch of videos about. I have to say, honestly, the best evidence against creationism is the lack of evidence for it. There are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of so-called creation science experts out there publishing books and tracts and pamphlets and giving lectures and making YouTube videos. And I've seen, I don't know, I'm not going to say I've seen or read them all, but I have seen or read a large sampling of those, and I have yet to see a single bit of positive evidence for creationism presented. All they do is attack evolution. And my guess is that given the amount of money, I mean, some of them, I think it's Answers in Genesis, for example, brings in $20 million a year or something like that, is the income for the organization. With that kind of money at stake, if they had one shred of actual evidence, they'd be trumpeting it from the mountaintops, and the fact that they don't shows me that they have no evidence, and the fact that they're searching actively and have no evidence suggests to me that the evidence doesn't exist. Next question: what places do I like to visit? I've traveled a bit. I would like to visit the Aleutian Islands again. I know I just got back from there, but I love it. It's pretty close to paradise for me. But in terms of elsewhere outside of Alaska, I really enjoyed Thailand a lot. I would love to go back there. We might go back there in a few years if we can financially swing it. Definitely want to go back to Thailand. I've also enjoyed traveling down in Mexico. I'm not sure what it's like now. It's been over 25 years since I've been there. Mexico and Central America, but I did enjoy it. Saw some amazing things and beautiful spots. Although, again, some of my favorite places, I've heard negative reports that they've become quite popular. And so, like, where there used to be jungle and little cabins, there's now big resort, that kind of thing. So, but anyway, what music do I like? I like a wide variety of music. I really like a lot of different music styles. Usually it's particular artists from a music style that I like a lot, even if, I may not like others from the same style. But if I had to pick one, that whole desert island thing, and I had to choose a genre or whatever to have with me, I'd say American hardcore punk from, say, 82 to 85 would be my choice. To me, that's I always come back to that, no matter where I explore other music things and enjoy. I always end up coming back to Crucifix, Fear, The Freeze, Dead Kennedys, the bands like that I just keep coming back to, and wondering why I ever tried listening to something else. Yes, will Russ ever stop lying? No. Russ is making a mint lying. He's not going to stop now. Kirk or Picard? Come on, Kirk, obviously. I've never been a fan of the Next Generation. I mean, it's all right. I mean, I watch them. I have the whole series on DVD. I just don't get as much out of them as I did the original series. So, I mean, I know people that feel the exact opposite, and that's fine. I can respect that, and I can hear their arguments and respect their reasoning why. I'm not one of those trekkers that's judgmental on, if you don't like what I like, then something's wrong with you. I think there's a good case to be made for any of the series and why they're the best, and I can listen to it and say I can see that. I still like what I like. Maybe it's because I was first exposed to it, but definitely I'm a big Kirk fan. Finally, do I have pets? Yes, I've got 5 dogs and 2 cats. So those are my pets. I think I've been away for a while. I think there's some fish and a hamster in there too, but I don't know if they're still alive or not. I haven't been back. I haven't been home in 3 months. All right, the next question is by Thesis Third Thesis 3D this for the thesis three thesis third. Oh man, so hard to pronounce. This is 3D. Okay, sorry. That's it's kind of an old joke. It goes back to a mystical forest being unable to pronounce this is 3D in one of his video responses to him, which is hilarious to me. But anyway, asked if I had to pick ham or turkey for a meal that I was going to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the rest of my life, which would I choose and why? And I'd have to pick, honestly, ham. I love turkey and I love ham. I mean, I really do. I love them both. But the only reason I would pick ham over turkey is that I've noticed that when we make a big turkey dinner, which we do often, we have a Thanksgiving meal probably 4 or 5 times a year. I mean, why not, right? Um, like, why only have something like that once a year? It doesn't make sense when you can have it. Turkeys are sold year round. We do a big Thanksgiving meal or we do a big ham dinner thing, and I've noticed that as much as I love the turkey, after a day or two, I'm kind of sick of it. Like there's something about like it just sort of, and I'm not talking about it getting old. I'm not talking about when green stuff's growing on it. I mean, it just kind of like once I've sort of filled the craving for it, it's just not as good anymore. While ham stays delicious forever. Ham. I mean, I love ham. So I guess initially I'd say I like turkey better than ham. If I had a choice for a single meal, turkey or ham, I'm going to choose the turkey every time. But for the long term, if it had to be that, I think I would get really sick of turkey faster than I would get sick of ham. Hopefully that's enough of an explanation for you. Okay, Salahe, I think I messed the name up. I'm sure I did. I wrote it down. My writing is atrocious, so I don't even know, I mean, let alone how it's pronounced when it's spelled properly. However I wrote it down is even screwier. Asked if I had to fuck a squirrel or 100 people would die, would I do it? I guess I'd have to say yes. I don't think I could be, I mean, it would be tragic, but I don't think I could be responsible for the death of 100 people. And as much as I like squirrels, it's a squirrel. It's not a human being. Then follows up with, what if they all worked for Microsoft? Yeah, it wouldn't make any difference. You know, I have I place a high value on human life. It's in my nature. Then asks if there's a prize for the most idiotic question. No, sorry. And that's far from an idiotic question. It was actually kind of an interesting one in reality. And the last question by Pigwigpaw asked, how are Arctic ground squirrels different from North American tree squirrels? Well, good question. They're actually in a group called a marmotini, which to me sounds like a really gross, like a drink. Like people have apple teenies. Like if you took marmots and I don't know, marmotini. But that's the tribe they belong to, the division, the family division, the division within the family that they belong to, with the marmots and other ground squirrels. You notice they have shorter tails than the tree squirrels do. A lot of tree squirrels don't hibernate. The marmotini all hibernate. At least I believe they all do. They're again, they don't live in trees. There's no trees to live in. At least that particular species lives where they're burrowers as opposed to tree dwellers. So that's I guess the big difference. And again, I suspect the lack of a tail has to do with their burrowing life and the fact that they don't need it for balance like a tree squirrel needs. They're very agile and they use their tail as a balancing mechanism. And I suspect that not having to need that makes a big bushy tail a liability. So you see their tails are significantly shorter than a tree squirrel tail.